sir. Yeah, of course. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Good afternoon. I would like to call to order this special meeting of the Encinitas City Council on Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023 at 4 p.m. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Blackwell?
Here.
Councilmember Ehlers?
Here.
Councilmember Hensy is absent. Deputy Mayor Lyons?
Here.
And Mayor Krantz.
Here.
Record will show that all members are present with the exception of Councilmember Hensy.
Okay, fantastic. At this point, we have a single agenda item, which is an informational update regarding the Homeless Action Plan, service providers, and partners. And we were going to have our Homeless Solutions Manager, Gonzalez, present, but he is unable to be here with us tonight, so take it away.
Yes, he is, expresses his regret and wishes he could be here, but we are here to answer, to present. So good evening, Mayor and council members and members of the public. This is a special meeting. It is to provide a second update to the Homeless Action Plan. As you may recall, our first update to the HAP was back in April of this year, and this is a follow-up to the meeting. The focus of this meeting is for our service providers and community partners to give an update on how they support the city in implementing the HAP. This is a list of the providers that we will be hearing from this afternoon, and we're going to start with the San Diego County Sheriff Department with Officer Wells. Yep.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, public. And so, San Diego County Sheriff's Department, I am Deputy Wells. I work out of the North Coastal Station. I am assigned to the Community-Oriented Policing and Problem-Solving Unit, of which the HOPE team is one of our collateral duties that we assist with. So I'll just go through these slides quickly. The North Coastal Sheriff Station Community-Oriented Policing and Problem-Solving team provides assistance to the Encinitas Homeless Outreach Program for empowerment. The HOPE team with homeless-related issues in the North Coastal areas to include Encinitas, Cardiff, Solana Beach, and Del Mar. And so we are not specific to Encinitas, even though the HOPE team is. We do cover those contract cities as well. This is a collateral duty for us on this unit. We do handle other law enforcement duties, but this is a collateral duty for us to help with the HOPE team. It is myself, Deputy Hoover, who is in the corner over there, is assigned to this, as well as the rest of our team, which we are a team of 6. Deputy Hoover and myself are the ones that are assigned specifically to this, but we have the ability to reach out to both our team members, all 6, plus at any given time, patrol deputies and everybody else at the station. Next slide. So I'm familiar with most people in this room. We've all met, we've all worked together. We form partnerships between the local business owners, community members, and individuals that are experiencing homelessness. We work with HHSA, which we have here. PERT, somebody from the Psychiatric Emergency Response Team, is available to us. PATH, People Assisting the Homeless. We work with Caltrans on cleanups and encampments. Code Compliance and Department of Public Works for all contract cities, the District Attorney's Office, and also California State Parks, which we have along our coastline here. Next slide. So primary focus of our team assigned to the HOPE team is resources first. We work within the HOPE team to make proactive contacts with the homeless subjects in our areas, identify their needs, and connect them to the appropriate community services. And that is sometimes up to us or sometimes dictated by the folks that we encounter. Building rapport and trust, that's the hard part, but we keep at it. We stick to the resources first approach. We collaborate with local agencies that I mentioned before, assist with any encampment cleanups, and then enforcement from law enforcement. That is going to be our last resort when working with these folks. We usually try and reach out to patrol deputies so that we will not have to be the ones that have to take enforcement action. But we will take action if it's going to be anything felonious, such as warrants, domestic violence, or anything that's committed in our presence. And it allows us to build a little bit better rapport with some of these subjects. We've known some of them for quite some time, and we have found that that is probably the best way to win their trust, is to not actively be looking for law enforcement action against them. And if we do take enforcement against any of the homeless subjects that we encounter, we always follow that up with referrals to the appropriate agencies, let them know that that is an option as well. And nothing that we do as far as law enforcement action will negate them from being able to receive any services at that time or in the future. So just some of our numbers that these are averages from the beginning of this year till now. We're averaging about 10 to 15 proactive contacts per week with brand new subjects that we have never met before. 2 to 5 follow-up contacts with known subjects that we are very familiar with. And that's check-ins and finding out where they are along the lines of receiving some sort of assistance. 3 to 5 encampment abatements per week. And that would be simple cleanups from just small amounts of trash to large project-based cleanups that we work with Caltrans and the city of Encinitas. 3 to 5 SEPTED projects, that's crime prevention through environmental design. That's such things as landscaping, lighting, and we work with business owners and the community members from all cities on those. We regularly respond to all calls of service. That would be the My Encinitas app, and referrals from both city members and reporting parties. And that is it.
We are now going to hear from Christina Harper from McAllister.
Hi, I'm Christina Harper. I was in contract with the City of Encinitas to do homeless outreach, and some of the services that McAllister provided was early morning outreach with the Sheriff's Department. We also sometimes had some late night outreach, and we worked closely with the Sheriff's Department as well as San Diego County social workers. McAllister does have a detox in Lemon Grove. It also serves as a residential, so there is availability both for male and females. There also is childcare provided for females who do have children but need to be in detox or in the residential programs. McAllister also has 10 outpatient programs with sober livings for clients to enroll in the program. We also provided flex funds, which we partnered with the City of Encinitas for that. And we also did family reunification. Family reunification would include, for example, if a client had family members or friends who lived outside of state, we would contact them and be able to provide them with a Greyhound ticket to get them to that location. And the case management services all included transportation, assisting clients apply for Section 8, applying for emergency housing vouchers, assisting them with the housing assessment through the homeless management information system, rapid wraparound rehousing. I would also make sure that I had a case plan with the clients to make sure we had some goals in mind as far as housing stabilization plans. And once the clients that I housed, I made sure that I had a follow-up case management with them for a month after they were housed, just to make sure they're following the housing stabilization plan and so that they could remain housed. And then in this next slide, I just put together a chart. So the total clients that we housed was 213. Interim housing would be if we got the clients into a shelter or got them into some type of housing that was immediately off of the streets. That was 90 clients. We referred 147 clients to behavioral health services. That could be for mental health. Well, mostly it was for mental health. We also assisted clients with benefits through the county, 193. And then for total clients that we encountered and served, as a total was 361. And there's my contact information. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Now we're going to hear from Matthew Brown from the county.
All right, good evening, and thank you for having us. My name is Matthew Brown, and I'm Chief of Operations with the County of San Diego's Health and Human Services Agency in the Department of Homeless Solutions. And tonight we're here to support the Encinitas Homeless Action Plan as it aligns with the county's adopted framework to ending homelessness, which was a way to operationalize the Board of Supervisors' guiding principles on homelessness and to align existing and future work throughout the region to assist people experiencing homelessness or at risk of it. I want to start with a brief overview of the department. The Department of Homeless Solutions and Equitable Communities is overseen by our Community Operations Officer, Barbara Jimenez, and was officially launched in July of 2021. It includes 3 offices, including the Office of Homeless Solutions, where I am at, which is under the Director, Deanna Beck. It includes the Office of Equitable Communities, which is overseen by Jennifer Bransford-Coons, and the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, which is overseen by Lucero Chavez Basillo. The department as a whole, the focus of the department is to achieve better coordination of existing and new county homeless and equitable community efforts and serve as a central point of collaboration for outside partners to ensure equity among all San Diegans and reduce homelessness in the region. There we go. The Office of Homeless Solutions is a county-wide department designed for reducing and eliminating homelessness in our region through evidence-based driven approaches that leverage existing regional partnerships and work with cross-sector community stakeholders to ensure person-centered services and data-driven homeless solutions. The county has been a partner on the HOPE team before this department even launched, dating back to June of 2020. OHS includes our services and outreach branch, which is comprised of staff that provide direct in-person services to clients in need. These services include trauma-informed outreach efforts, case management, and benefit support. For fiscal year 22-23, that accounted for nearly 40,000 client engagements countywide and 1,241 right here in Encinitas, including the housing of nearly 100 individuals experiencing homelessness right here. OHS also administers, either directly or through contractors, multiple different programs that are designed to assist specialized populations, including transitional-aged youth, disabled adults, older adults, and justice-involved individuals and LGBTQ communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from our Jewish Family Services, Nicole McCune.
Hello, good evening. My name is Nicole McCune. Next slide, please. Our program provides case management and a safe overnight place for people who are experiencing homelessness to shelter overnight. Some of the offerings that we have is resource navigation, and that includes identity documents, employment search, resume help, employment coaching, also housing search. So we help people locate Section 8 housing, market rate housing, and low-income housing. We help with things like transportation. So we are able to provide gas cards, small vehicle repairs to keep people in their vehicles, keep them going to work and school, and to medical appointments. We just recently partnered with True Care to offer on-site medical and dental services to our participants. We help in benefits screening, so we can do some in-house benefit screening through JFS, and we also refer out. We engage with a comprehensive budget and assessment with every one of our individuals and families enrolled, and we look at holistically where we can help them. We come up with a plan to get them back into stable housing. That's our overall goal. And we can help with food access through our corner market, pantry foods, and food donations on site. We also help with budgeting to get people credit repair, get them bank accounts, savings accounts, and a plan to establish credit if they don't have it. Next slide, please. So the total number of individuals served since 2021 to June 2023 was 131. The households was 131 households, which comprised of 161 individuals. 24% were positively housed, which is a breakdown of 30. If we're looking at individuals, that was 38 individuals that we have housed. Family reunifications, we've had 12 households positively reunified with family, and we help with gas or flights to get back to their family members. And the number of individuals that we housed, helped get back into family reunification was 12. A little demographic, number of participants under 18 were 14 served, 18 to 54, 75, and the largest portion of our population is seniors. The number of seniors over 55 was 72. Next slide. We have a few college students and also veterans that we help, 8 since February 2021, and 2 college students. Most of the safe parking participants across all sites are experiencing homelessness for the first time, and you can see that 89 of our safe parking participants were homeless for less than 1 year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from People Assisting the Homeless, or PATH. Daniel?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Daniel Sturman. I program manage a team of 4 individuals here in North County, San Diego. PATH has been contracted with the County of San Diego to provide a San Diego Homeless Outreach Program. It's a countywide program that provides homeless outreach to primarily individuals with mental health and substance use challenges. Our program staff conducts street outreach to support individuals experiencing homelessness by developing a rapport through ongoing contacts and basic needs assistance. Our outreach staff provides case management, housing navigation support. Our PATH SD HOP team has outreach teams in North County, East County, and South Bay. We collaborate with quite a few partners. Here's a list of them. I could go over them if anybody has questions on who these partners are and what they do. But these are primarily the partners that we work with up here in North County, San Diego, across the board. Currently, we have 1 full-time employee in the Encinitas, Solana Beach area, 1 full-time employee in Carlsbad, 1 full-time employee Vista San Marcos. We're missing 1 full-time employee that does unincorporated San Diego counties, and we have a partnership with Interfaith Community Services for the cities of Escondido and Oceanside. We decided to break down, and we track our data through Clarity. Hopefully the board is familiar with what Clarity is. It's our homeless management information system here in San Diego County. We kind of broke down our numbers in the North Coastal and North Inland regions. North Coastal does include the Carlsbad area. In the past 2 years that we have been operating this contract, we've served 179 individuals with 51 positive exits and 17 to permanent housing. I just want to note that our coastal team has struggled to continue to have people hired. Our full-time employee here in Encinitas has been with us for 4 months, and prior to that, we had an outreach worker that was with us for 6 months. So all in all, unfortunately, we've only had an outreach worker in this community for about 10 months. Here's my information. Please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Hi, yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight, or this afternoon, I suppose. My name is Rebecca Nussbaum. I serve as the Chief Program Officer at Community Resource Center, and as the primary social services agency headquartered here in Encinitas, we are happy to share with you about our partnership with the city and the work that we have been doing in the community since the Homeless Action Plan was passed in February 2021. And at CRC, we believe that everybody deserves to be safe, healthy, and housed, and we tailor our programs around that. We are focused on serving those who are economically vulnerable, including low-income individuals, those who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness, including domestic violence survivors. And so tonight, I'm going to speak more directly around our two programs. Let's try this again. Yeah, we'll go there. Specifically about Encinitas opening doors, as well as the homelessness intervention and prevention funds funded by Assemblymember Borner's office during this time period from 2020 to 2022. Specifically regarding Encinitas opening doors, some of you may or may not remember, I believe Mayor Kranz, you were around when this project was born, but born in 2016, Encinitas opening doors was really an idea from the mayor, Mayor Gaspar at the time, and the city's desire to take bold action and invest and address homelessness in Encinitas. And CRC has been successfully contracting with the city since that time and has just recently moved into our 8th year of operation for the project. Opening Doors is designed to assist those experiencing homelessness secure permanent housing. And I just want to take a minute to define what permanent housing means to CRC and what our definition is, because I know it can mean something different in different places. But for CRC, permanent housing does not mean temporary shelter or hotel stay. It does not mean transitional housing or something short term. Permanent housing really means a signed lease and where someone can and will be able to call home, because really ending homelessness starts with the home. And so at CRC and through Opening Doors, we provide intensive case management to overcome barriers to housing. We match individuals to resources, employment, and housing opportunities. We also provide housing stabilization assistance to ensure that once folks are housed, that they are able to continue to maintain and retain that housing. And I think it's really that work that has supported our retention rate of 76% of folks that we house during this time period were able to maintain their housing thereafter. So really permanent housing for these folks. So during this time period, we had 65 permanent housing placements, and we were actively engaging and case managing 264 unsheltered Encinitas households during this time period. And I just want to share two exciting additions that we're having in this fiscal year. And the first is regarding a dual diagnosis clinician who we recently have aboard at CRC as of June. We know that individuals with substance use disorder and serious mental health illness are more likely to experience homelessness, and that they must overcome additional barriers to permanent housing. The dual diagnosis clinician is a critical addition to CRC's frontline staff and is working closely with our case managers, providing crisis intervention, treatment, and counseling as needed. The clinician will also coordinate with staff at local hospitals and treatment centers to assist the clients with outpatient treatment services and support medication, compliance, and efforts to secure housing. This is a really big addition to our services, and we're really grateful to be able to offer it in Encinitas. In addition, as of March of this year, we were also able to hire a housing coordinator, who is somebody that is working with local landlords to build a landlord portfolio to ease the process of getting folks into housing that we are working with more quickly and efficiently. The rental vacancy rate in San Diego County is less than 3%, and for every listing on the market, there are approximately 29 people competing for that rental. That is why a position like this is so critical. The next program I do just want to share briefly about, and I don't have a slide, but it's about the homelessness prevention and intervention funds. This was one-time funding that we received from Assemblymember Tasha Borner's office. It was funded through the city, but a CRC was intended for, facilitated the project. And the intention of the funds was really to provide that prevention and intervention for homelessness. We utilized those funds who were, again, at imminent risk of homelessness, as well as those who were already experiencing homelessness. It included rental assistance, transportation assistance, moving assistance, storage fees, utilities, arrears. And during the time of this program, we assisted 93 households and 119 individuals. I'm happy to share that 93% of those assisted with the project remained housed at 12-month follow-up. What we saw as a result of this project was such a strong demand in homelessness prevention assistance. The project was uniquely timed because it was during the pandemic, but again, that strong demand for that homelessness prevention assistance. On average, I know RTFH is here as well, but the stat is that for every 10 people who find housing that are experiencing homelessness, 13 become newly unhoused. And so again, that prevention assistance is really critical. And I'll close with a story of someone that we worked with. His name is Fred, and he gave us permission to use his image as well as his story. But he is a senior that was living in Encinitas, and we've been working with him for over 10 years. And in fact, we've been working with him longer than we've actually had a database to track that we've been working with him. And so he's 69 years old, and he's called Encinitas his home. He wanted to stay on the coast due to his support network and the quality of life he found here. We were able to connect him with an emergency housing voucher and housing in Solana Beach and supported him with rent and deposit. And a year later, quite unfortunately, we found out that the apartment complex that he was moved into was going to be demolished. And however, he came to CRC again. We were able to work with him and help him port his voucher so he could continue to stay successfully housed. I like this picture in particular because he brought a big pen, similar to how a president, when they sign an important document, they bring a pen and they distribute it to folks. Well, he brought that pen, signed this lease, and then gifted it to our CRC staff, which was quite thoughtful and endearing. And so I just want to say there's more work to be done, and we are happy to be a partner with the city to support folks in being housed. So thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next, we're going to hear from the San Diego Regional Task Force on the homelessness.
Well, hello, Mayor Tamara Kohler, CEO of the Regional Task Force, and council members. I am excited to be with you today. As the CEO, sometimes I have my staff do these presentations, but I think when cities lean in and put plans together, it's important for me to be here to support that and make sure that you understand the role of the Regional Task Force and how we support you. It's always important to understand why we exist. We're federally authorized, so we're not funded through local government, we're not funded through state government, we're actually funded through the federal government. We're a continuum of care. There are 44 of them across the state. It's a geographic responsibility. Our singular role is to address homelessness, to find a system approach so that homelessness is rare, brief, and one time. Next slide, please. I always start these presentations, I think it's important, with what we believe. And as an organization, we firmly believe that homelessness is solvable. We need all of the things to work together, but if we had enough housing, healthcare supports, enough places for people to be, homelessness would be extremely rare in our communities. Next slide, please. I wanted to make sure that you as council members and mayor and even a community understand what we do. We are very much behind the scenes. We're the infrastructure that supports all of this work. We do not deliver any direct services, but we fund direct services, like the safe parking lot here. That funding comes through our organization. We administer the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, as I think Dana called it, Clarity. This team behind me are folks that we train, we teach, we partner with, we fund for your community to do this work. We promote best practices, training. In fact, we were doing some this week on Monday with law enforcement throughout the county. That is our role. Many of these providers struggling to hire and staff up, we provide that training on how to do this work in a really intentional way and bring all of that work together. And so we're bringing those levels of coordination, policy, and practice to the work. We operate the coordinated entry system, which is a way that we prioritize our most vulnerable for for the limited housing resources in the community. We set policy. We do this work on a federal level, on a state level, and here locally with you all. And we fund homeless services. As I said, Jewish Family Services. We fund the safe parking. We have funding through CRC and some capital campaigns. So we bring funding to the community. We don't ask for funding from cities. We support you in that work. And we're a collaborative applicant for federal funds that come through HUD, about $35 million. We're hoping to get more than that this year, but about $35 million every year. And then we do the monitoring, the practice, and the reporting on all of the work. Next slide, please. We put out a regional plan, and I think Matt Brown from the county talked about their work. Our work on a federal level to coordinate also coordinates with city plans, with your consolidated plans, with the county plans. These are not created independently. They're created to be interdependent in a really intentional way. And so the work being done at the county, there's a state plan, there's a federal plan. All of those plans are sort of organized in a way so that we're also looking at it at a local level. What are our local challenges and how do we fund those? But also being able to pull down the maximum amount of federal dollars and state dollars by coordinating all of those plans, approaches, and aligning all of our stakeholders as much as we can. Next slide, please. In that regional action plan are 5 population goals and 5 system goals. And for cities, a lot of times we'll say anywhere that you want to lean in these population goals, that's where we can support you, coordinate our funding, and to really lean in that intentional way. We have a large region, and so every city has a little bit of a different challenge, but there are alignment of goals, practices, and funding to really help us as a region reduce our numbers and really lean into reducing the first-time homeless, which we're seeing an incredible increase. Next slide, please. As was shared, we put out a report every month of that first-time homeless and the numbers housed. And this is where the statistic came from that most people use, that for every 10 people that we house in our system, 13 more are experiencing homelessness. And unfortunately, it's been 16 months since we had a month where we housed more people than came into the system. And so the importance of really level setting what the data looks like, it also allows us as an organization in supporting you all to really lean into where the needs are. We organize this in data around seniors, around families, around our TAPE population and veterans, and then our unsheltered. And you can actually see what the housing numbers are for those different populations. Veterans we're doing fairly well on because we're well resourced. But when we're continuing to see over 1,100 people experiencing homelessness in each month, we're really leaning into that first-time homelessness and putting some significant resources along with the county to address that. Next slide, please. We also have public-facing dashboards that I don't know that City Council or the Mayor knows about. We can actually drill down to the programs that are doing work in Encinitas and tell you specific data about those programs. We also in October are going to start leaning into where clients, we have location understanding, because some of our providers are doing this work across multiple cities, and being able to really understand who is in your community, we're going to be able to track that on a data level, is going to be required starting in October, and it will allow cities, should they choose, to be able to put together really good by name list work of people that you know are just experiencing homelessness in your community. Next slide, please. And so for Encinitas, we just pulled these from our dashboards. We can prepare these reports for you at any time. These are the numbers experiencing homelessness that are in our dashboards. You can see that you're seeing a little bit more chronic homelessness from the last year of 2021 to 22, year 2022 to 23. That is usually a direct correlation of how hard it is to house people in your community. Chronic means they've been homeless for a year with a disabling condition. And as you heard from your service providers, they are struggling to hire staff, but they are also struggling to find those units. It is highly competitive, and many times the longer it takes to house people, the shorter your capacity, the more you're going to see people starting to experience more chronic homelessness in your community. Next slide, please. Also, I think it's important to look at your households. So we look at individuals, but how many households? Encinitas has more households, not individuals, but you're looking to house more families or households in Encinitas, and that's an important characteristic that is not the same in every city, so we're able to provide that information to you. Next slide, please. And also your demographics. so that you understand kind of what your populations look like. Do you have an overrepresentation in any of your populations? You're seeing, and we don't talk about it a lot, but the ethnicity challenges, because we tend to talk about race and population, but we can also do this from ethnicity as well. So you're Hispanic, non-Hispanic, and really looking at, you have an overrepresentation of Black San Diegans, over 16%. That is an overrepresentation in your community. So how do we lean into that and reduce their numbers? Next slide, please. And then also your age and gender. So you know what you're seeing in population is pretty well distributed. We have some concern at that 65 or older and the 55 or older. If you take your 55 and your 65, that's almost 50% of your homeless population here in Encinitas. It also means a different intervention. Traditionally, that population is not going to increase their income. So the importance of thinking about housing with those subsidies is really important for this population, because they're usually not the same interventions of families that have earning potential. And many of these, it's a health issue, it's a crisis, and we need housing that meets that need. And so we've got a lot of data that we can support you in your planning. Next slide, please. A lot of work that we've done in San Diego, and we're really leaning into it, is we have a number of Black San Diegans that are overrepresented in our system. Encinitas is not unusual. We see this a lot. And what we're really leaning into is why that is happening and how we might prevent some of that or be able to reduce those numbers. If we had it in relation to what your population is of Black San Diegans, we believe we could really move the number and really reduce some of those numbers as well. So we're putting some very intentional funding there, some very intentional training to be able to do that, coordinating with the county and our service providers. But this is an important space for us to really think systemically about what's creating that as well. Next slide, please. And then I talked a little bit about your a by name list and an opportunity for each city. This is a national approach called Built for Zero. We're doing an incredible body of work with the county. Leave no veteran homeless. It is the exact same methodology. It's a data-driven approach. What it is looking for is in every system, being able to house every month more people than are coming into your system. It's getting to a functional zero. It's a system that can really address the need every month and then know what you need to be able to whittle down and reduce those numbers. We're really excited. We're really leaning into this. You'll benefit as well on the veteran side, but an important approach with Supervisor Nora Vargas and the county team, the VA, and all of our providers really leaning in. But the Built for Zero model can be used for any population for the city. And then I also want to make sure that Council and Mayor knows that we have what is known as a flexible housing pool. We also work with an organization we contract with known as Brilliant Corners, and all that they do is look for units of landlords that will house and be willing to enter into a lease with folks experiencing homelessness. You heard about the challenge of, what was it, how many people looking for one unit, right? 29. You know, a homeless population is not going to get picked for that unit when it's a 1 to 29 ratio. And so we put funding into securing those units so that we can pull them off the market. We have an agreement with the landlord. They know that they're going to get a tenant that's experiencing homelessness. We offer tenant supports and use those units to really work with our service providers so that we're not spending a bunch in application fees that a homeless individual can't afford, and really being able to lean into that. We're able to cover the deposit, so we're putting a significant amount of flexible funding to really make that a little bit easier to find units, but also to have really good relationships with landlords as well. It is not in competition with our providers, but to find new landlords and bring on more resources. And there's our contact information. We do an annual conference now on homelessness. You're welcome to come to it. It's December 5th and 6th. It's just focused on San Diego's regional approach to addressing homelessness. And with that, thank you.
Before you sit down, I'd like to ask a couple quick questions. So the Built for Zero, that's a community solutions approach?
It
from
is.
Roseanne Haggerty? And is there a plan to roll that out for other population groups aside from the veterans?
Yeah, we've been using it on the TAY population, which is challenging. Mayor, you may know Roseanne. I know her incredibly well. I've worked with her for years. I'm actually headed to DC in a couple of weeks to work with her on some narrative work. You can use it on any population. It's really, if as a city you want to do it, it's a by name list approach. You could do it for families. You can do it for a senior population. It is a data-driven approach and a community practice.
I'm impressed by her program. One of her high school classmates is a resident of Encinitas, Bob Kent, and he got us a little meeting with her when she was here for your Live Well San Diego conference. Would love to see more of her work implemented in our region. The other question I have for you is related to the bureaucracy that surrounds so much of this area, right? Very capable people trying to help homeless folks have a hard time navigating the system. So the notion that someone who is homeless is going to be able to do that on their own is just, to me, you're setting them up for failure. Is there something that your organization is doing to help these folks that are in these situations to navigate the system?
Yeah, the system is complex and challenging, no question. Not only that, it is underfunded and under-resourced. It's one of the few systems that the more that you see need, the more that there is concern about how much we're funding it. Think about that. There is no other system in a social system where we say, hey, there's a greater level of demand. What are we doing with the money? Maybe we're not actually doing a great job. And in fact, we work with not only our providers to put out resource information, but the very best front line to this work is outreach workers. So many people experiencing homelessness, first time they're staying in a motel or they're trying to piece it together. They're staying in their vehicles, and your outreach teams are truly your front line of defense for many of those folks. No one expects to be homeless, so we don't teach what you do when you become homeless. Not like a fire drill, and we all know what to do. So one of the biggest challenges is directing people how to get good information, how to know where CRC is, how to connect with those. You do community outreach fairs here, but it's also important for them to know how to find that information in 211. Especially because we have a very large region. A lot of people will say, well, I called 211 and they weren't very helpful. And I'm just going to say, part of it is being able to direct them how to use 211 to answer the questions that they need. Is it prevention that they need? Is it eviction? Is it legal that they need, right? How do we keep them in their housing? And so if anyone is reaching out to you saying, I'm concerned I'm going to experience homelessness, encouraging them to use 211, but to walk through what is really their need. Saying, I think I'm going to be homeless, doesn't actually get you the help that you need. There's a lot of resources at the county level. There's a lot of support from organizations like CRC. It's really educating your community. So anywhere that we can help do that, Mayor, any community meetings, any places that we can help get that information out, I think it's really important. I'll also just say for your senior population, many of them will literally go without their meds, go without their health care, not pay their utilities, not eat, to try and maintain their housing. They do not know where to go. So we are also working with the senior centers across the region to make that an access point to give more information. So anywhere that you might like us to, that we can help do good education and help connect them, we're here to help deliver that message too.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here today. You touched on something that I think is a pretty valid criticism, and that is that we have spent a tremendous amount of money, billions of dollars on this subject, and don't seem to be making any headway. In fact, things seem to be getting worse. I know here in Encinitas we've got one of the best social workers with Stephen Gonzalez. We've got Deputy Wells and his team. We've got a great, compassionate, hardworking, dedicated group that is focused on this issue. So we'll do what we can, and appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that concludes our presentation from our service providers and our community partners. And I wanted to note that staff does anticipate providing the council with an update on the Navigation Center in September or October timeframe. And that concludes our formal presentation.
Okay, and Kathy, do we have any public speakers?
We do. We have two. Dan Vaughn, followed by Steve Gerken.
Good afternoon, evening. Dan Vaughn, I'm with St. Andrews. We provide a Saturday morning program for our local homeless community. We offer hot showers and a host of other programs. This population is Some of the most hardcore homeless that you'll see, they're disproportionately chronically unhoused. They're disproportionately living on the street. About a third do have a car that they're living out of. I, in particular, work to connect our client-facing volunteer activities with the service providers from the community. Work closely with Miranda Chavez, the agency lead for our HMIS implementation. We're part of the Trust Network. Partnered with Matt to bring the Office of Homeless Solutions on site once a month. Partnered with TrueCare to bring the mobile dental and medical vans on site. Worked closely with Jason Sweet when he was the outreach worker for PATH in Encinitas. And I can tell you that the system is broken. I personally help many of our clients try to navigate the system. It doesn't work. The challenges aren't just a matter of knowing how to call 211. I called 211 when the county issued the weather emergency, opening shelter beds for the hurricane. And if you called 211 and gave them an Encinitas zip code, you got told that it hasn't been activated. If you know how the system works well enough, and you gave them a Rancho Santa Fe zip code, because Rancho Santa Fe is part of the unincorporated county, you did get transferred to a service provider. I gave up after waiting for 15 minutes. We need better resources, we need better coordination, and these are the same things that were in the Homeless Action Plan a long time ago. We need named patient lists, and that means more than just the HMIS system list. For my clients, the HMIS system, we've got about a third that refuse to be entered in the system. Of the rest, I know that they're working with agency providers, and only about a third of them are being actively updated. For the clients that do get housing, very few of them are being tracked in the system. We put people in with priority scores, VSAP scores of 9, and we can't get resources for them. We can't get housing. Can I take another minute?
Yep.
So I would say that the biggest thing that we can do going forward is to go beyond the once-a-month coordination meetings and meet with all of the agencies that touch these clients on a regular, maybe weekly basis, compare notes, make sure that we're tracking the individuals that are already homeless, and equally important, people that are at risk of homeless, because we can divert those folks for pennies on the dollar. We need beds. We don't have beds in Encinitas. If you look at the sheltered to unsheltered ratio for Encinitas compared to the county, more people are sheltered than unsheltered. Encinitas, less than 10%. The other thing we need is services in Encinitas locally. Shipping people off to Vista or Oceanside or Escondido, it's a choice for some of them, but for many folks, that doesn't work. We need to bring the resources to the community. Wonderful that we now have mental health dual diagnosis stuff here from CRC. I haven't yet seen it impact our client base. I'm hopeful, optimistic. It is a glaring need. But that dual diagnosis population, people with serious mental illness, as people fall off the wagon, become unsober, start to show signs of psychiatric distress, if we can catch those people then, we save the system a ton of money, we save the individuals a ton of suffering. We need to divert. Thank you.
And thank you, Dan. I know that as a member of St. Andrews, you are also involved with a group called Faith in Action. That's the mission here, is to put your faith in action. And I am familiar with the work that Jesus did in his day, and talk about what we need to do for those with the least amongst us. And I greatly admire the work that you're doing. Thank you for that.
Thank you. We do take that love thy neighbor stuff seriously.
Following Steve Gherkin is Martin Kent and then Paul Trouse.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. My name's Steve Gherkin. I want to thank the community providers that came in and spoke today. I think they backfilled a lot of information that wasn't available in the staff report, and I think that they'll help augment some of the things that I'm going to talk with you about today. Once I learn how to use this. Okay, so what I did is I know Stephen's new to the job, to the town, so I'm going to go through what he provided and augment it with what I know about the homeless action plan to date. So one of the things that struck me was the McAllister Institute was canceled, the HPIF grant was canceled, the temporary hotel voucher program was canceled, the HEAP grant to the JFS for the SPP, the parking lot was canceled. So you see there's a major trend there that these grants don't last very long and they get canceled. Let's see, what else? PATH, we just learned, I guess that status is still funded by the county. So we can go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. The homeless outreach program, you know, that's funded by the city, but that's 4 to 6 police, as we heard about today. So that's done by the city. Open Doors, it was a 2014 to 2016 program, federally funded to help homeless veterans. That grant was canceled, and then the city picked it up, as it was mentioned by the earlier mayor, and that's been going on since 2017. That's now a line item in the city budget, so I found it interesting that there are entitlements now for programs going on in the city budget. Let me keep looking down here. And then the Navigation Center now has come up, which is new to everyone, which is the possible collaboration with the city of Vista to open a center to accommodate a homeless population from the city of Encinitas. And staff's going to bring that forward. So, you know, one of the questions is, what's the cost for that? That's unknown at this time. Next slide, please. So one of the things I did earlier on was I was looking at expenditures and what we were getting for our money. And in a public records request to the city not controller, but chief financial officer gave me these public records. And I've tried to anonymize them so nobody gets embarrassed by revealing their salaries. If there was a partial work on a project, oh boy, I'm out of time. If there's partial work on a project, that person's salary was apportioned accordingly. And so you can see there's lots and lots and lots of people within the city working on housing and homelessness. Next slide, please. You know, and it just keeps going on and on and on. I was unable to get the fire department any information on them, on their expenses for responding to homeless emergency actions, nor the emergency medical response. And if I could have a little bit, then I'll wrap it up. Next slide. So what I was hoping for to see in this was it says there's no fiscal impact. I guess that's because nothing's being accomplished today in terms of decision making. But it would have been nice to know what were the programs that were done in the past, what did they cost, and then of course, what did they achieve? If I could go to the next slide, please. So, you know, my conclusion is we've seen a lot of programs over a lot of years spending a lot of money. And one of the things I didn't see in any report, and it's what's missing in this analysis for the city, although some of these solutions providers clearly did it well. What are they doing? What are they spending? And what are we getting? And clearly we see some of them are saying, we're solving homelessness at this level. And to which I would ask the council to ask those questions. If we're going to do a program, what's it going to cost? And what am I going to get for it? You know, I don't want to hear how many mouths got fed. I want to know how many people got housed, and then there's these different criterion of homelessness. And in doing so, you'll be able to see what monies you've spent and were they effective or not? Should I move the money in that direction or this direction or stop it? And so that's the fiscal responsibility that I ask the council to take as they look at all of these programs and these updates. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Martin Kent. He'll be followed by Paul Traus.
Hello to the City Council and the community at large. I have been thinking about homeless people my whole life, like all of us, because we've encountered them. I grew up in a home with two parents who were homeless for 4 years. They were Holocaust survivors. They were not in the camps in Poland, they were on the run, running for their lives for four years, sleeping in a barn here, sleeping under somebody's house there, getting some shelter from somebody here and there, and basically homeless for 4 years. And then when the war was over, there had been 3.3 million Jews in Poland at the start. At the end, there was only the 0.3. 3 million were gone. Those 300,000 people were all homeless. They had no place to go. They couldn't go back to their homes. Some of them tried, and there were new families living there, and they killed them. There was a massacre in a town called Kielce, so they couldn't go down there. This is your worst nightmare of homeless. So what happened was they wound up in DP camps, displaced person camps. We had them in Vietnam. We've seen them on the news all our lives. And my parents spent 4 years in a DP camp for homeless Jewish people who had lost everything in the Holocaust. And they were basically army barracks. And my parents lived in a room that was maybe half this size, and they had a cot, and there was a blanket hung on the wall, and these were the room dividers, and they spent 4 years like that, and they'd have communal meals and communal facilities. I'm thinking, why couldn't we have something like that as an immediate thing? We have people camping on the streets in tents, and it's now illegal to be in your tent. What if, okay, where are they gonna go? We're talking about navigating a difficult bureaucratic system. What if there was some land out in the outskirts of San Diego where bring your tent, or maybe we build some army-style barracks so that we have a temporary place till these people get placed somewhere. My parents waited 4 years to get a visa to the United States. And it took a long, long time, but at least they were with a shelter over their heads, and they had 3 square a day. And they were safe. That's the other thing. You don't want to be on the street. You want to be safe. So I did a whole bunch of research. There's a whole movement that's global called sustainable eco-villages, where people, these are kind of like the old communes that we had in the 60s and the 70s, where people wanted to drop out of society, and they'd wind up getting a piece of land. And one more minute, please. And they could be on that and raise some food and build some shelters for themselves and be, if they wanted to. And I would guess that some people might actually like this, some people who are off the street. Now, it's not a one-size-fits-all. We've seen that, and it's great that there are so many programs out there for different people, veterans, seniors, families, kids. Why not have something like this as an interim? I don't know where to go with this. I actually pitched it to Father Joe's Communities and Jewish Family Services and the Lucky Duck Foundation. Everybody said, oh, interesting idea. We'll think about it. And I never got anything back. I would love to get some feedback from anybody here in this room. I'm going to leave my all this material that I pulled off the internet and my business card. And maybe something could happen with this as an interim idea. Thank
Leave that
you.
with the clerk.
Where can I leave this? With the clerk?
clerk?
Okay, thank you.
And your story was very touching. Thank you.
Paul Traus.
Thank you for the opportunity, members of the council. My name is Paul Traus. I live at 819 Doris Drive in Encinitas. And I'm here today in part because I'm part of an organization called Casa de Luz. For the past 20 years, 15 years, we've been building homes for homeless people in Mexico. Since the pandemic, we've been building temporary transitional sleeping cottages for folks who are without homes. We are strictly volunteer, non-for-profit organization. We erect the house at no cost to the occupant or to the operator. We then turn the house over to the operator, lease it to them for as long as they use it to house someone who is without a home. I just want to make 3 very quick points today. First, we recognize just how tough the job is that you guys have. And frankly, I'd rather not have it. It's got to be thankless. Second, to request that you show courage. Addressing this issue is going to take a tremendous amount of courage and often require you to work in a way that is not in your own self-interest. As you step back and look at this from a macro issue, the issue is a supply versus demand issue in many, many ways. And you are in the unenviable position of having to confront the demand side of the equation in a single-family residence town. Good luck, guys. Third, I think it's absolutely critical that as you do this, you recognize that the only thing that people who are experiencing homelessness have in common is they are without a home. There is no single solution. There is no action that everybody's going to look at and say, that's it. You're going to have to tick some people off. You're going to have to take a diversity of actions. Thank you.
That concludes speakers.
Thank you. I appreciate all the comments. I wonder if Deputy Wells, you could speak to the point about the offering of services to the homeless and the option that the unhoused person has when you offer them shelter.
I think the answer to that is in the room. These are our service providers that we work with. And so as a first contact, we assess and we listen to what they need, what their needs are, and find the best suited person to refer them to. Sometimes it's as simple as a pair of shoes from the CRC. Other times it's reaching out to Christina from McAllister and getting those services taken care of.
If you told somebody you had a home for them anywhere else, wherever it might be, and that individual decided they didn't want to go there, what could you do at that point?
The last gentleman said it best. Everybody's different. Some people would accept. Other people, there's no home that they will accept.
So they'd rather be on the streets than whatever it is that you're offering?
Some folks, yes.
And there's nothing that you can do, can't be arrested, they can't, assuming they're not breaking any laws, and the Ninth Circuit has complicated things a little bit. Is that correct?
It is not illegal to be homeless.
Yep. Okay. Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Thank you. I have a few questions, but I want to start with one. It's a little bit different than we usually do because this is going to be focused on our partners who are here in the room. But one of the things I heard that I'd like a little more clarity on, maybe staff, maybe I'll start with staff to see if staff can shed some light on this, and then maybe I could get some supporting information. But one thing we've been talking about for quite a while is a list, a comprehensive list of people who are homeless and that all of the region can use. I've heard some more people here today mention that. It seems like from my perspective, it seems like there may be some barrier to creating that list. It's not a list that we're creating, so maybe this is more of a general question to those who are involved with this list to be able to respond to. I like being able to access the data and share data. I think that empowers all of us to be better informed and to work together. And so that's why I'm asking about this list. Would you like to step up?
So there are a couple of ways that data is collected, and I'm just going to start with the importance of personal protected information. So when we talk about lists of individuals, nearly everyone experiencing homelessness that's been connected to any of our service providers, even those that are resistant to be in HMIS, the majority of them are in HMIS, and that is a by name client database. What you're looking for is a way to organize your efforts around your own community's known individuals experiencing homelessness. And the way that works really well is being able to work with your service providers who have the client has authorized them to share their information amongst providers and prioritize that group for housing collectively. And what you do is create a community list, not sharing names and information publicly, but intentionally as an approach. That means with your law enforcement that are doing the outreach. And the way that works in communities is you usually have a group of, we're doing this work in Imperial Beach, it's 24 individuals, and they are working to get those individuals housed. And it is super intentional, age, need, demographics, history of homelessness, and you work that list. What's really important is to recognize these are people, and we are protecting their personal information. So it's not something we're posting on a website. It's not something that council members should want to see their names. What you want to see is the numbers, the need, the coordination, and the outcomes. You want to see the housing outcomes. So when we talk about knowing people by name, we have a robust population. We have over 41,000 unique individuals that touched the HMIS system in this region. So we know those individuals by name, and we know a lot about them. But if you want to work a list as a community, that is a coordinated effort with all of these folks, along with the county. And what you want to know is the numbers, the information, the demographics, but never their names. That's kind of the space you want to be in. Does that help?
Perfect, thank you. That was very clear to me. One of the things that it seems clear to me is that we don't have this list as was just described, and that it could be beneficial to share across our partners who are all working in the similar direction forward. Okay.
Just really fast from experience, the city of Carlsbad, right next door, they've implemented something similar. I'm sure if Stephen was here, he'd speak on it. But they've implemented something similar, and our team's taken part of it, and we've had great success. So
Thank you.
Just want to let you know. Thank
Appreciate that. Thank you.
If I may, just to add on to that, Royce Powell, Director of Development Services. We are coordinating with the City of Carlsbad. We believe that we heard the council express interest in creating a by-name list. We were made aware that the City of Carlsbad have created a list, so we are coordinating with them to find out their process and how we can duplicate that for our purposes.
Thank you.
Because homelessness doesn't necessarily, stop at the border, right? It moves, it's migrational, yes.
Yes.
Councilman Raylers.
I think I have a question for Rebecca and some comments. You can come back up and to continue on. I was going to ask about the point in time count, but I'm going to go into the HMIS database first. So, first of all, your website with the data, wonderful, so easy to navigate. Everything's there. It's very nicely presented. With the HMIS database, I totally understand that we do not want to use people's names. We have to, I think, I'm going to ask one question, is that how you index them? In other words, how would a coordinating organization make sure when they're talking about a person in your database to use the name as the index, but we just don't publicly?
I don't mean to correct you, but my first name's Tamara.
Oh, Tamara, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Sorry.
But I'll answer to just about anything in this work, so just so you know that. Our service providers are the ones that put the client records in them, so they know them. If there's ever a time that we need to talk about someone, let's say, I'm just going to give you an example that is in the DV space. We can use a client identifier, so we're actually not even talking about the individual. And these are incredibly well trained on how to do that. It is, and so in the system, yes, there's client level data. You are only able to access it if you're working with that client. They also have a unique identifier so that we can do other coordination. There are some populations, those that are human trafficking, some of our RIA, runaway and homeless youth, and some of our DV. They're absolutely even more intentionally protected, and we'll use a client ID on that.
So, for instance, if the HOPE team encounters somebody, how does that information they collect and they refer, how does that get into the HMIS database, or can it?
It can, and it depends. I don't know if our HOPE team is actually putting information or partnering with one of our providers to be able to put it in. So in some areas where I have no outreach, it is some of the homeless outreach teams that are putting the information in. The best practice is for them to work with the service provider to put that information in, so that there's also this important space of an individual experiencing homelessness. If an officer is putting it in, there's a certain amount of concern of what you're putting in where if it's a service provider, they're putting it in the HMIS one. And I will also say our HMIS is regional. So it is across the entire, so any city, like working with Carlsbad, it's also the same database. And so being able to work with your partnering communities, you can also do regional work as well. One universal client record. Every service provider, if they're working with them, can add to that universal client record. That's where the coordination happens.
But only if they know their number or their name or have a way to vector
Yeah,
into
you got to be working with them. It is protected information, right? So you only touch the records of someone that you're working with.
So one more question about, and it gets into the locale, because I love the fact there's a central database. This makes, finally getting a central clearinghouse. But now we have to work on what's going on in our city.
Right.
How do you determine where the client is and where they're from, or which locale has I won't say jurisdiction. Responsibility is probably the best word.
So because the records are inputted by service providers, it's where they're doing the work. Right. Yeah. So CRC and their locations, that's in your community. Okay. Outreach into organizations, it's where they're actually contracted to do the work. But to your point, we realize that we have some service providers that are in multiple cities in, say, North Coastal, North Inland. And so we are now implementing, it starts in October, that the outreach teams can actually use GIS mapping and have location of where folks are out. Because PATH is in multiple communities. And when I pull a report for PATH, it pulls it all into PATH's primary location at the city of San Diego. That doesn't mean that's where people are experiencing homelessness, and it's twofold. It is so cities can lean into bringing the housing in your community that you need. It is a fair housing violation for me to prioritize by race, protected class, but one of the things that is not a fair housing violation is location. Yeah. And so if I can identify clients by location, if you put something in your community, I can now prioritize, without it being a fair housing violation, for your community. So the location piece is twofold. Knowing individuals, being in your community, and to support you when you're trying to stand up shelters, housing, and other things, that you can prioritize that housing be for people in your community, and we can now do that through location, which is not a fair housing violation. Really important for us to be able to support you in that way.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That was very enlightening.
Thank you.
Councilmember Blackwell?
Yes, thank you. A lot of great information, and I really appreciate the dedication of all of you who are working in this area day in and day out. I know it can't be easy, and particularly because you want to see success, right? People placed, people housed. A few things stuck out for me. Love thy neighbor was one of those quips that stuck out with me, and I think resources first, coming from the HOPE team, is another good one. So I'll share some other observations, and then I want to get to maybe my point here, which is, as I think about it, we've got a lot of dedicated people doing great work. We have, we need multiple solutions. I heard the diversity of solutions. There isn't a single homeless person that's like the next. But I also heard, it's tough to have sustained funding, the grants dry up. I heard we really could use better data, which was very good to see that. I've never seen that before, so now I know where to go. But having that data drilling down, but even perhaps maybe, I don't want to call them, I will, some goals towards the outcomes we're trying to achieve, so we can say how successful are these efforts. And I think that would be really good. And then probably the biggest thing is the coordination. So many different levels, federal, county, state, city, so many people working on this, but I heard very clearly when Dan spoke, that coordination issue struck a chord with me, and I think that's because when I was on the Equity Committee, I was also on the working group for the Homeless Action Plan in Encinitas for a brief period, and it was dissolved over time. I know it when we heard in April, Roy, that we were going to resurrect that. Have we done that? And that was the city taking a role in coordinating the different efforts and making sure there was a lot of communication, sharing information, et cetera.
That is one of our homeless coordinators or homeless solutions manager. That is one of his main objective and priorities, and that is to coordinate with the different agencies and service providers to make sure that the service is being provided in an efficient manner. So we're working through that with our homeless solutions manager.
So do we have a standing group that has a regular meeting or not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Our priority right now is focusing on the navigation center and securing that. And then the next priority would be working with our service provider to maximize outreach efforts, which some of the providers have said that is the front line and that is the priority. So those are the two main priorities that we're focusing on.
Okay. My hope would be that we can get to better coordination as well, right? But out of curiosity, what do you see the city's role for that coordination or for that working group really being? Am I right in saying it's just to share information? Is it something more, less?
For sure, sharing information, but it can be more. And like all the service providers said, we need to do more. Mm-hmm. Some of us don't know what that is, but our role is to continue coordinating with each other, to learn more from each other and what's happening in other cities, other regions, and implement some of those ways. And like everybody said, there's no one solution, but our role is just to make those connections and coordination and get the word out and outreach. So
yeah, I agree. I think the city can play a really important role there. I won't put that coordination above the first two goals you said, but I hope we can get to it sooner than later because I think that's a gap for us. So.
And we will. Okay. We will bring forward the navigation center agreement sometime in the next month or two, and then immediately following that, it is important that we do the outreach and the education to promote the navigation center and the services that will be provided through that center.
Yeah.
So it's critical for the success of the navigation center.
Absolutely, I'm aligned with you on that. But thanks for thinking about the coordination.
Thank you. And one of the things that comes up a lot in this subject area has to do with mental health issues and substance abuse disorders. And McAllister was providing some of those services. What are we doing now? Is the county able to provide those services? How are we dealing with people who have substance abuse issues? Are we able to get them into treatment? And on top of that, I want to say again that the city doesn't have a Department of Health and Human Services, but the county does. And I know a lot of the state resources, federal resources go through the county. So making sure that as Councilmember Blackwell mentioned, this coordination with the agencies that have the services that these folks need is critical. So I get back to this notion of what is it we can do with people that clearly are abusing substances and or have mental health issues?
So some of our service provider, including the county, PATH, they do provide those services. So we do coordinate with our service provider to connect those individuals or households who are experiencing
So maybe one of you could get up and speak to how you address those issues when you encounter someone on the streets that clearly needs an intervention.
How you doing, folks? So prior to taking this position, I worked as an outreach specialist in the North County, San Diego area. In North County, San Diego, we have interfaith community services that provides both detox and substance use treatment. We have a privately operated detox service that only supports people with alcohol abuse. They have 2 houses, one in Carlsbad and one in Rainbow, and then there's a female. Those two properties are for men, and then there's a property in Vista that supports women with alcohol use problems. The thing that I've struggled with the most is, one, getting clients into services when they're ready to get treatment. One of the biggest things we're doing is we're building rapport with people, getting to that point where we can say, hey, you know, you want all this, and this is just that one thing that's stopping you. And they get to a point where they say, yeah, let's try that. But, you know, it's difficult. And then on top of it, you know, McAllister definitely has a lot more. In Lemon Grove, they have a much larger facility. I think Interfaith only has maybe like 8 or 10 beds per sex. So it's like 10 beds for men, 10 beds for women, and they have maybe 8 or 9 for detox. So in reality, North County, San Diego is really short in terms of being able to get somebody into those services when they're ready for it.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Lyons.
We have so much work to do. We just have so much work to do. But I wanted to say I'm really proud of our city for taking this on. This has not been easy. This is hard, and we put our shoulder to the wheel. We decided, yes, we're going to do a homeless action plan. We're going to have a plan. We're going to put it in place, and we're going to work that plan. I think we've done a lot of really good things that have moved the dial for us, and so I just wanted to start by saying that. I also want to thank all of our partners and service providers who are here today for doing the great work you do for us, and we hope to continue to see you work with us to achieve common objectives. And I also want to thank our religious institutions who we didn't shine too much of a light on, but Dan, thank you for being here to represent how much work they do for us. So I just want to say, my first comment is this, that we've done a great job to get here. But what we're identifying today is that we have a lot of good work to do in the future, too, in order to continue to move the dial. So now I want to play off of Councilmember Blackwell's comment about, I kind of was reading through the lines to hear her say, let's put a structure around this so that we can do some organized coordination, and through that, on certain milestones, identify where are we, what have we done well, and where do we need to adjust and move forward from here. So this is just, you know, kind of the overall process of getting an understanding about what we're doing well, and then where to go from here. And I think that will evolve as we go through this process. A very important part of that, and this is to staff, is measuring. So we say this about everything because we're looking, how do we know if we've done well unless we're measuring? And some of the comments from the community have also said, how do we know, first of all, what is the money we've invested, and how do we know whether we're being successful from the perspective holistically as a city who's responsible for working this plan? So could you let me know what our ongoing thoughts are on putting some structure around that, knowing what our data is, being really clear about what we're doing within our geography here in the city, and then identifying from where we are now where we need to go forward? Yes. Before I respond to that, I would be remiss if I don't mention this regarding collaboration. There's extensive collaboration happening throughout the county. So I want to make sure that that's clear, that there is already collaboration throughout the county. My response is primarily what the city of Encinitas, what we're going to do. And that is what we're going to work on as we bring forward the Navigation Center, is to include an effort to not only
coordinate with the agencies, but also just our own outreach efforts here in our community. So that will be included. So when we bring forward the Navigation Center, some of the questions that the City Council have asked tonight as it relates to different service types of services that will be provided, all that will be included as part of the discussion when we bring forward the Navigation Center, because in addition to securing the shelter, but we would also need to provide a service provider to provide all the services that is needed for those individuals or households that would be housed at our shelter. So more to come on that, but in terms of the collaboration and moving forward, implementing a plan for coordination, that's something that our Homeless Solutions Manager, Gonzalez, will work collaboratively with not only our HOPE team, but also all of our other service providers to come up with a comprehensive plan in terms of not only outreach, but also coordinating with other agencies to tap into services and resources that are available in through other agencies. So all that will be presented when we bring forward the Navigation Center. In terms of cost, that's also something that we will discuss. And then how do we measure those success? How do we, so like some of the community members have said, what are we getting for the money? I believe one of the presenter identified some of the funding as being canceled. So some of those fundings are through grants, and it's a one-time grant that we just expend the money, and then and that's it. So we're continuously looking for a grant. I believe we mentioned previously in our previous presentation that we were able to secure the PLHA grant for approximately $930,000. So some of that money will be used to fund our Navigation Center, as well as the service provider that will be needed to manage that center. So when we bring forward the Navigation Center, we will outline all the cost that's been associated or that's been expended so far for all the service providers, as well as the fund needed for the Navigation Center moving forward.
Okay, good. I'm glad you wrapped all of my comments into that ultimately, so thank you. I just have one other question. I heard, I just want to get some feedback from our service providers, because that's where I think I've heard it, is our zip code a problem? And I say that because it came up again today, but I've also heard that sometimes when we go into the system and we look to get support, if our zip code here in Encinitas, zip codes, plural, come up here in Encinitas, that disqualifies us for certain programs. Is that, I've heard this about Section 8. Don't know, it's just, I don't know. Are there things like that that we're pushing up against? Yeah, Dan's going, yeah, maybe. Anyway, if we don't know the answer.
Unincorporated areas here?
No. We are an incorporated city.
I was going to say, as far as homeless services, right, and we're funded through HUD, and HUD also funds your housing authorities in Section 8. There's not any restrictions for your zip codes here. So if I'm just going to bust that myth, that's not true.
Okay.
If that's
thank
helpful.
you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
I was going to say you should be able to get all of the resources in your community. I think your advantage is your coordination to be able to pull down the grants. And I think that's really important. I also just really quickly, there was a comment that one of your grants for Jewish Family Services, the HEAP funding canceled. It's sunsetted. The state gives these weird one-time funding. So you're being funded through HAP funding, which is another state one. So really important in your reporting when they change their acronyms, that you don't see that as losing that funding, that you carry on with the next acronym that's funding it in your community. So.
Soft money is complex. Thank you.
Councilmember Ehlers.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on the Navigation Center, that those are going to be high barrier, low barrier beds up in Vista, or will include?
It'll be low barrier.
Low barrier. So that'll help offset the lack of funding right now from McAllister in that. And in fact, are those the only low barrier resource beds we would have available to serve the homeless here in Encinitas?
I'm not 100%. I would have to defer to our service providers. But as far as our navigation center, that would be a low barrier.
Okay.
center.
So if I might add, Councilmember Ehlers, those are the only beds that the city is pursuing or have ever pursued. There are other beds that are available by the county and through other resources, but these will be ones that will be paid for by the city of Encinitas.
Yeah, but in having a low barrier option is certainly something we need. So I want to talk a little more about people refusing and trying to understand how and again, I'm going to get your name correct, Tamara. Do you track people that refuse service? In other words, and maybe you need to come back up one more time to look at this HMIS database. I'm trying to understand, does it represent only the people that have accepted services and therefore get into the process?
No, yeah, so.
Or, let me
go
finish
ahead.
the whole
Sorry.
setup. The whole setup would be, is it a good representation of what the total number database, the total entries, does it represent 90% of the people we think are actually homeless? Do you have an estimate for how many are actually getting into the database versus how many are out? And then, within those that are in the database, do we know what percentage have refused service?
So I'm gonna,
Or home
yeah,
rehousing?
I will answer that two ways. One, we do a fairly good job of getting nearly all individuals experiencing homelessness that consent. San Diego County, for our HMIS, is one of the easiest iterations, so Clarity is super simple for providers to use. Clients consent and their information is entered. There are, as you heard, some that will not consent, but the majority do, because they know to be a part of being prioritized for housing, you need to be in that database. One important characteristic of outreach is engaging with an individual who is unsheltered, and too often when someone who is unsheltered is having a conversation with outreach or law enforcement or others, we count that as engagement. Okay. Whether they accept housing at that offer, shelter at that offer, but we track the engagement. So you'll see the numbers of services of engagement, and sometimes they'll record in their case notes that the individual declined saying going to get these services, but the longer you build that relationship, especially with chronic, eventually they will accept housing, and it is proven over and over again. Strong data has been done around this. Some need a number of levels of engagement. Sometimes you catch them at the right time, and that's truly one of the things that we know. So the system doesn't look at someone who refuses service today. That engagement was a service, and we're building that trust and relationship.
Perfect. Thank you. And then I think the last question may be, I don't know who it's for, whether it's for the county, but I think Dan Vaughn's comment about the 211 difficulties, is that something that is systemic we've seen, or and Steve may be the better one to answer this, and unfortunately he's not here, and I would almost invite the county to come up and talk about it, or any comments about any difficulties with 211 and what would have caused that, the long delay or the confusion? Because I would think that's what we spend a lot of the county spends a lot of advertising, getting that number out there as a way to get to services. And does it work? Maybe I should join Dan one day and go try dialing in. Maybe we all ought to.
Yep.
So the county activated for the unincorporated areas that they act as sort of a pseudo-city for. The city of San Diego activated for the city of San Diego. Encinitas doesn't have anything like that.
So, but you made another comment that you called in for the unincorporated, and...
Yeah, I don't know. Matt might have some visibility into that. I called in for Rancho Santa Fe, which is basically all that's left of the old San Dieguito unincorporated area.
Right.
And they do have a contract provider that was 211 transferred to, and then, high demand or whatever just overwhelmed their system.
Was it over the weekend with the rain and all, or?
Oh, yeah, it was, so
Oh, okay.
the system was activated on Saturday through Monday for the hurricane.
Okay, so maybe that was it.
Demand overwhelmed their capacity.
Okay.
Thank you. I have a law enforcement question. Oh, I'm sorry, you want to add? Please.
Yeah.
Just going to add, I think what you've heard highlighted here several times is that navigating the system itself is difficult.
Yeah.
That's what service providers specialize in, connecting with individuals through street outreach, through multiple engagements, and then helping them navigate that system. So calling 211 on your own without the prompts of how to access exactly what service you may need, that can be challenging, no doubt about it. But once we work with you and start to assess those needs, that's what we then take over and help you accomplish, systematically removing those barriers so you can, so the individuals can then access their housing goals. Just wanted to add that in.
If I may, Mayor, just to add on to that, we do have our 311 as well as our My Encinitas app to report any concerns, or if there's a homeless related individual, if you are experiencing individuals who are experiencing unhoused individuals, that to report that through our My Encinitas app. It's the most efficient way to get those individuals as well as the concern addressed immediately and efficiently. So.
And I would just add that, with all due respect to our service providers, we determined that that was probably going to be an issue for the storm, and that's why we authorized our own hotel vouchers paid for by city funds, not by county funds, to house what turned out to be about 20 people on Sunday evening. So we do anticipate where there will be issues or problems and try to be flexible and figure out a way to solve something here in the city.
Thank you. So, law enforcement question has to do with some ordinances that we have on the books that restrict the ability to sleep in cars, using barbecues, things like that you would probably commonly see at an encampment. And so residents are asking, are those ordinances just not being enforced? Are they unenforceable from Boise? What is it that how do we approach situations like that, people sleeping in cars, for example?
So due to the Boise ruling, such things that are imminent of homelessness, such as sleeping in your vehicles, that is somebody's home at that particular time, if they're experiencing that. There's no legal standing on that, such as resting on a bench, where the line is drawn. Let's use the barbecue. So if we are going to go to the beach and have a barbecue, we are not allowed to do that. Whereas somebody experiencing homelessness, if we encounter a camp, that is their kitchen. So they're not doing it in an illegal fashion. And it's something that we have to be careful about with the arson. So if there's that danger, we're obviously safety is going to be first, and we're going to take action on that. But it's something that's very hard to put into law with that, due to the nature of that is their kitchen. That is the way in which they are living at that particular moment. Yes, it's citable. It can be cited, and in a lot of cases, we do take action against that. But with the outcome hopefully being that they will accept some type of services to remove that so that they can get into housing that does have a kitchen that they maybe use.
Okay, and we've seen recently the city of San Diego adopted a fairly, the anti-camping ordinance, right? They put together a place for tents, trying to get folks off bridges and out of public places that were setting up encampments. I think once that law was adopted, we saw an immediate impact here where perhaps more people were looking for places to go other than the city of San Diego because of that new law. I know that the city of Poway adopted a similar ordinance. I'm sure there will be other jurisdictions that do an ordinance like that. Are we looking, how are we approaching the possibility of adopting ordinances similar to that or others in our area that would make the issue of homelessness kind of an even playing field when it comes from when it's from one jurisdiction to the other?
I don't believe I'd be able to answer that. That would come from a city level, not a legal standpoint.
I think last time we talked about shopping carts and the legality of, are we looking at that?
Yes, there have been some ordinances that we will be bringing forward. In particular, the shopping cart ordinance has been drafted, and what that would basically do is say it would confirm that shopping carts are owned by whatever retail establishment, and the retail establishment would have to find ways to either contract with somebody to help pick those carts back up, et cetera. So there's a cleanup part, but then the other part would be that it would be very clear that it's not legal to take them and use them for other purposes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ayers, did you have another question?
Yeah, actually I did, and maybe a closing comment. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizations for coming and explaining, and boy, I think there was more information flowing up this way, so thank you, thank you. I had questioned about the point in time count, and I'll go, what next? Are we going to have another update? And someday I hope to meet Steve. I haven't had the pleasure to meet him yet, so if he's listening right now, Steve, I want to make some time to meet with you, being the one of the new council members. But I went back on the website, pulled out the point in time data, and looked at it, and it basically is pretty consistent since 2016. And I know in the HAP, we plotted it out, both the sheltered and unsheltered, from 2016 to 2020, and then recently we have gotten the 2022 and 2023 count. And if you look at the total, it's really roughly in that total from 80 to 125, and we've been pretty consistent over not 8 years now, right? And so I guess what I would look for in the next update is I'd like to see us track that as one of the metrics. I think as we develop better databases that are more integrated, because I kept finding myself asking the question when one group said we serve this many people and another group said we serve this many people, how much overlap is there? And so I'm looking for the holistic, which is why I focused on the Regional Task Force on Homelessness. I thought, that's what we need. We need the database. We need a way to know that we're talking individuals, because who was it that said it's every problem, every unhoused person has unique circumstances? Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think I've heard that from everybody up here. So one of the next things I'm looking for is that point in time, just to keep track. Are we getting better, getting worse? And the interesting thing in the fact that it's fluctuating in the same, at least not yet, we haven't seen a sudden increase, even though it seems more apparent to somebody that's lived here a long time. But the numbers so far say over the last 8 years, we've been fluctuating within bounds. And so I think that's an important metric to monitor. And then I would love to figure out how to understand, and maybe it's not refusing service, a better metric might be refusing shelter. That if clients come in and don't want shelter, and I base that partially on when I went along on a ride-along, the two people, unhoused people that we encountered, separate incidences, both refused any service. And one was a younger middle-aged woman who clearly it's not safe for her to be out there, and the deputy that I was riding along with was so gentle and so empathetic, and it was great. And so I was really happy. And what I noticed is it flowed off the tongue so smoothly that obviously this is what this deputy did every time. And the fact that she refused, I went, oh, man, and I understand the relationship, and I totally support that approach, is that you have to build the relationships with these people over time, but we need that central database to make sure we know. And so those are my comments as we move forward in this and coordinate, and I can't wait to hear what Carlsbad does. So thank you, everyone, for coming.
Yes, thanks to everyone for being here and to the service providers. I really appreciate the work. I did want to clarify that unlike Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones, I was not around when Jesus Christ had his moment of doubt and pain. But I've read a book that recorded that history, and it is, in fact, something that drives me on this subject. And so very grateful to all the work that's being done around the city to try and address this problem. It's intractable, but we can keep working at it. So thank you all very much. And with that, we're adjourned.
So how's the Vista? I think I've met you once. I didn't save your information.
Do you mind following me out to my vehicle? I have it. Yeah.
It's good to see you both. Yeah, pleasure.